My sister-in-law slapped me in front of everyone at a party because I accidentally bumped into her, but my husband took her side. Now he's shocked that I want a divorce. Last week, I went to my mother-in-law's house for a family dinner. It was supposed to be a pleasant evening, just like any other family gathering. My husband Ryan and I were both excited. When we arrived, the atmosphere was warm and cheerful, and everyone seemed to be having a good time. After dinner, things became even livelier. The adults started drinking, relaxing, and enjoying the evening. As the night went on, my mother-in-law acted like the perfect host, refilling wine glasses and keeping everyone in a good mood. At one point, music started playing and some of the adults began dancing. My husband and I joined in too, letting ourselves enjoy the moment. I didn't realize that my sister-in-law was standing right behind me. I was moving to the music when I accidentally bumped into her, causing my glass of wine to tip over. Before I could react, the wine spilled all over her dress. It was a complete accident. My sister-in-law let out a horrified scream. She was wearing a white dress that was now soaked with dark red wine. I immediately started apologizing and explained that it had been an accident, but I could see that she was furious. Ryan quickly grabbed some napkins and brought them over so his sister could try to dry the wine. I kept apologizing and tried to help clean up the mess when she suddenly started yelling at me. It was obvious that she was taking all of her frustration out on me. "Are you blind?" she shouted. "Can't you see what's happening around you? How can you be so clumsy that you spill your wine all over me?" I kept apologizing over and over, trying to make things right while she continued scolding me and calling me careless and stupid for ruining her dress. Eventually, probably helped by the wine I had already drunk, I finally answered her. "I'm really sorry, but I don't have eyes in the back of my head. How was I supposed to know you were standing right behind me like a ninja?" Ryan laughed at my comment while we continued trying to clean her dress. I had only meant it as a joke to relieve some of the tension, but it had the opposite effect. My sister-in-law visibly stiffened and stared at me with even more anger. The next moment, before I could process what was happening, she slapped me hard across the face. The sound was loud enough to echo through the room, and my cheek immediately started burning. It wasn't a light slap. She had hit me hard. Everyone suddenly went silent, which somehow made the situation feel even worse. My sister-in-law kept screaming at me. "How dare you talk back to me? I can stand wherever I want. You should have been more careful. I can't believe you ruined my dress because you're so stupid. Do you even know how much this dress costs? Do you know what brand I'm wearing? You couldn't even afford something like this." I was mortified, standing there while everyone stared at us. Ryan didn't say a word. He simply stood there silently while his sister berated me in front of everyone. My mother-in-law and father-in-law finally stepped in and tried to calm her down. My mother-in-law gently tried to comfort her and move her away so she wouldn't make an even bigger scene, but my sister-in-law refused. "This was my favorite dress!" she screamed, practically shaking with anger. "It's completely ruined because of her. Look at this stain, it's never coming out." Then she turned back toward me and glared. "You're going to replace it, and I'll make sure you pay every last cent it costs." Her tone became even nastier as she added, "Although I doubt you can even afford something like this with your pathetic salary." I think that hurt me more than anything else because she was deliberately trying to humiliate me, especially over my income. For some context, my sister-in-law married a wealthy man shortly after graduating from college. Her husband is significantly older than her. He is 13 years older than she is, and around 9 years older than Ryan and me. He is a professional from a wealthy family, which puts her in a very comfortable financial position. Ever since getting married, she has lived a luxurious life and seems to think the rest of us are poor. The most ironic part is that she describes herself as a traditional wife. Yes, you heard that correctly. She proudly calls herself a traditional wife. She spends a lot of time making TikToks about how her purpose in life is to serve her husband and prepare herself to become a good mother to their future children. Being a traditional wife is something she wears like a badge of honor, but she looks at everyone else through a lens of privilege and arrogance. The ironic thing is that they have so much money that she barely has to do anything for her husband herself. The people her husband hires do those things. It's not like she's waiting at home with dinner ready after he finishes a long day at work. Her husband, being the wealthy man he is, has always given her everything she wants in life. So I completely understand that her dress was probably very expensive. I genuinely felt terrible about spilling wine on it. I really did. But even if I could have been more careful, I couldn't understand how my mistake justified that reaction. Did accidentally spilling wine on her dress justify slapping me in the face, humiliating me in front of everyone, screaming at me, and implying that I was poor? I'm not as wealthy as her husband, but I do quite well for myself. I'm definitely not poor like she claims. Of course, compared with her lifestyle, almost anyone would look poor by her standards. I tried telling her this, but she continued her rant, and I could feel my blood pressure rising. Her voice became sharper and louder, and it was getting to me. She was standing extremely close to my face. At some point during all of this, I don't know whether I stopped thinking or simply didn't care anymore, but I felt my hand move before my brain could react. I slapped her back, hard, so hard that she immediately went silent. My slap was probably even harder than hers. Her cheek turned bright red. I looked directly into her eyes and said, "Can you stop screaming for 1 second so I can speak? I'm going to replace your dress, so stop yelling about how I can't afford it. You've never had to spend a cent without someone else paying for you, so who are you to call me poor? My sister-in-law looked like she was struggling to process what I had just said. She was furious, but before we could argue any further, my mother-in-law pulled me away from her. "Get away from her!" she shouted before immediately checking my sister-in-law's face. My husband, who had stayed completely silent while his sister had been screaming at me earlier, suddenly joined his mother and began worrying about his sister. Both of them were suddenly full of concern for her while she started crying loudly, complaining about how disrespectful I was and saying that no one had ever slapped her before. Maybe that was the problem. My father-in-law, visibly alarmed, ran to get ice for her face as though I had permanently injured his daughter. Their reaction was almost surreal. It was as if my sister-in-law had been shot or had a grenade explode in her face. My slap had been hard, but not that hard. The melodrama was overwhelming. Then Ryan suddenly turned on me. "You had no right to slap my sister," he shouted. "This is all your fault. All you had to do was apologize and keep your mouth shut." Trying to defend myself, I said, "We were dancing. Your sister came up behind me and I didn't see her. Spilling wine on her dress was an accident." I apologized over and over, but what justified her slapping me first? At this point, I was determined to defend myself because everyone seemed to be against me. Before Ryan could respond, my sister-in-law started screaming again. "How dare you slap me? Do you even know who you're messing with? I'm going to sue you for assault. You're going to pay for this. Remember that." Then she turned toward Ryan and yelled at him too. "How embarrassing. How can you not control your wife? She has no right to say anything to me after what she did." Without waiting for anyone to respond, she stormed off to the bathroom to change, with my mother-in-law following closely behind to comfort her. I remained standing in the middle of the room, surrounded by people whispering and clearly talking about me. Somehow, they all seemed to see me as the villain. That was when Ryan turned toward me, looking frustrated and disappointed. "You need to go home," he said. "What? Why?" It sounded insane. I could barely believe that my own husband was telling me to leave in front of everyone. "You've done enough," he continued. "You caused a scene and my sister needs to calm down. She can't do that while you're still here." Then he added, "You shouldn't have slapped her back. Actually, you shouldn't have done anything no matter what she did to you. You're older than her. You should have acted more maturely. I'm sure she didn't really mean it when she slapped you, but you made everything worse by hitting her back. You unnecessarily escalated the situation." My father-in-law stepped in and nodded in agreement with Ryan. "It's better if you leave," he ordered. They were kicking me out of the house. Not just my in-laws, but my own husband too. I couldn't believe that he had completely chosen his sister's side, no matter how unfairly I had been treated. I saw no point in arguing anymore. I grabbed my things, quickly ordered an Uber, and headed home. During the ride, I could only think about how everything had gone so wrong for the night to end like this. All I had done was defend myself after being humiliated, slapped, and insulted. Was that really so unforgivable? And why hadn't Ryan stood up for me? I already knew that, to my husband, his little sister had always come first. For example, the first time I met his family was at a casual lunch. I remember feeling nervous, but throughout the meal, my sister-in-law spent her time and energy questioning every detail of my life, my upbringing, my education, even my job. It didn't feel like polite conversation. It felt like an interrogation. I remember being confused by how intrusive she was. To be clear, Ryan's family and mine came from similar socioeconomic backgrounds, and I was already working in technology, a field that paid me significantly more than Ryan earned in advertising. Despite that, she acted as though I wasn't good enough for her brother. At one point, she openly said that Ryan was a great catch and needed to be careful about getting serious with just anyone. And where was Ryan during all of this? Sitting silent, of course. Not once did he speak up to defend me. He simply let his sister say whatever she wanted without challenging her, as if it wasn't his place to intervene. After that lunch, when we were alone, I told Ryan how upset I was. I explained that it wasn't fair for his sister to treat me that way, and more importantly, that he should have defended me. To be fair, he apologized at the time. He said he hadn't realized how his sister's behavior looked and excused her by saying she was simply being protective of him. He also claimed that he hadn't heard the entire conversation because he had been thinking about something else. He promised that next time he would stand up for me. For a while, he did. But over time, that promise faded. Eventually, he returned to his usual behavior of letting things slide. Still, this situation was different. His sister had never become physically violent with me before. When I got home that night, I waited for Ryan to come back so we could talk, argue if necessary, or do anything to address what had happened. But he never came home. Instead, sometime during the night, I received a voice message from him. He told me that his sister was still upset, and that he, his mother, and his father were going to stay there and take care of her. As if that wasn't difficult enough to hear, he continued by saying that most of his family believed I was wrong. If his sister followed through with her threat to sue me for assault and emotional distress, he would have no choice but to support her because she was his family. He didn't stop there. He told me I needed to give his sister a sincere apology, one that would calm her down enough to convince her not to pursue legal action against me. I know many people in my position might have given in. Maybe they would have apologized. swallowed their pride, and admitted to something they didn't believe just to keep the peace or avoid more conflict. But I couldn't. Deep down, I knew I hadn't done anything wrong. Yes, spilling the wine had been an accident, but I had repeatedly apologized for it. The slap I gave my sister-in-law wasn't unprovoked. It was a reaction to being humiliated, insulted, and physically attacked in front of everyone. If anyone owed an apology, it was her. She slapped me first. She escalated the situation because she is an entitled person. I knew that if she actually tried to sue me, she probably wouldn't have a strong case. Her claims of emotional distress were laughable at best, considering the circumstances. It was obvious that her threats were nothing more than a power move, a way to force me to beg for her forgiveness and soothe her wounded ego. But what hurt me most wasn't my sister-in-law's behavior. It was Ryan. Throughout the entire ordeal, he showed where his loyalty truly belonged, with his family, not with me. The fact that he could so easily take their side after everything I had endured said a lot. Not once did he ask if I was okay. He didn't check on me or offer me any comfort. Instead, he spent the entire night blaming me for everything, as if I were the only reason the evening had fallen apart. While listening to his message, I realized something painful but necessary. This wasn't only a problem with his sister or his family. It was a problem with him and with our marriage. So the next morning, when I woke up and my husband still hadn't come home, I packed my things and left. No note, no explanation. When Ryan eventually returned home and discovered that I was gone, I imagined he must have been shocked because my phone immediately started ringing with his calls. I answered, and he demanded to know where I was. There was no concern in his voice, no sadness or worry. He was simply angry. He yelled about how he hadn't expected to come home and find the house empty, and how furious he was that I had taken all my belongings. Then, as though it justified his anger, he proudly announced that he had worked very hard to convince his sister to come back to our house with him. His grand plan was for her to receive a face-to-face apology from me, so the entire situation could finally be resolved. I couldn't help letting out a sarcastic laugh, keeping my voice calm. I told him I was going to my parents' house and made it clear that I had no intention of returning anytime soon because I had a lot to think about. I also told him very clearly that I would not apologize to his sister for something that wasn't my fault. However, I added that if his sister wanted to apologize to me for her behavior, I would be more than willing to listen. That wasn't what Ryan wanted to hear. He argued that, as his wife, I couldn't simply leave like that. He called me rude and inconsiderate and demanded that I return home immediately. I told him no. I also told him that if his sister wanted to go ahead with her empty threats to sue me, she was more than welcome to try. Then came the insults. Words so ugly and hurtful that I don't even want to repeat them here. So right now, I'm staying at my parents' house. I've told them what happened. My dad is completely on my side and has even scolded Ryan for failing to defend me. My mom, however, thinks I shouldn't have left my husband without talking to him first and believes communication is the key to solving our problems. So, Reddit, am I the bad guy? Update 1. Today, I looked up the price of the dress online and sent my sister-in-law the money. I hope this finally puts an end to her complaints about the dress. I know many of you didn't want me to pay her, but I don't want to owe her anything. I ruined her dress, and I always intended to compensate her for it. That's what decent people do, and that's what I prefer to do. I also gave her back the slap she gave me. I'd also like to clarify a few things that have repeatedly come up in the comments. First, as a woman, I know when another woman is deliberately trying to bother me. My sister-in-law has always had this inexplicable need to compete with me from the very beginning, even though I've never considered her competition. It's obvious that she is jealous of me for some reason, although I can't say exactly what it is. If I had to guess, it might be because I built a successful life and career for myself. Unlike her, I didn't marry a rich man so I could afford nice things or live comfortably. I've worked hard my entire life for everything I have, and I suppose my financial independence is something she resents. My sister-in-law married a wealthy man and seems completely dependent on him for the life she lives. Although her husband gives her everything, he is also somewhat controlling. Because he is much older than her, she has complained to us in the past that he doesn't allow her to go out with her friends very often or wear certain clothes he doesn't like. However, I don't feel sorry for her. This is the life she chose for herself. She loves showing off her luxurious lifestyle and constantly reminding us how privileged she is. She brags about vacations to exotic places, the designer clothes and handbags she buys, and how she doesn't have to worry about working because her husband takes care of everything. She spends her days relaxing by the pool, getting her nails done, or doing Pilates. So I don't understand why she resents me or sees me as competition when this is the life she always wanted. Second, my sister-in-law's husband wasn't at the dinner that night. Normally, he rarely attends any of our family gatherings because he is too busy working. Also, from the few times I've met him, he seems very level-headed. I'm certain that if he had been there, my sister-in-law never would have slapped me. He never would have allowed her to throw a tantrum like that because he cares a great deal about how they appear in front of other people. Finally, after reading hundreds of comments on my post, I can't help agreeing with everyone. My husband has always been manipulative. For years, I wore rose-colored glasses and chose to ignore patterns that had always been there. The truth is that he has consistently chosen his family over me, and I allowed myself to believe that this was simply how things were supposed to be. Take Christmas and New Year's, for example. We have always celebrated those holidays with his family, year after year. Despite my repeated requests to alternate and spend some of those important holidays with my family, he always manipulated me by saying that his family came first. Whenever I brought it up, he insisted that, as a good daughter-in-law, I needed to compromise and prioritize his family over mine. I always felt that my needs, my family, and my traditions mattered less than his. During those moments, I would feel guilty for wanting anything different. I also blame myself for how things have turned out. I now realize that I allowed my husband to dictate my life for far too long. His lack of consideration for my feelings, combined with his subtle manipulation, kept me constantly doubting myself. I was always questioning myself, wondering whether I was being too demanding or unreasonable. But I'm glad I came to Reddit with my story. Everyone here has finally opened my eyes to the truth. Finally, the reason my mother is somewhat on my husband's side is that she believes I shouldn't allow something as insignificant as my sister-in-law being rude or toxic to interfere with my marriage. She clearly doesn't understand how deep this problem goes or how much it has affected me. She doesn't see how my husband's behavior has worn me down over time. However, she does agree that my sister-in-law was completely wrong to slap me. Update 2. Ryan and I finally had a face-to-face conversation in a neutral place away from the house so we could talk about everything clearly. Almost 2 weeks have passed since my last update, and I decided that I finally needed to address everything with him. When we met, Ryan started by apologizing. That surprised me because I honestly hadn't expected him to apologize at all. He told me how happy he was that I had paid his sister for the dress. For a moment, I thought this was exactly what I had been waiting for, a genuine acknowledgement of the situation. But of course, Ryan immediately followed it by saying that now it was my turn to apologize to his family. He explained that I still owed his sister an apology for humiliating her in front of everyone. He told me that his mother and sister had basically threatened to exclude him from the family unless he made me apologize to her. I stared at him in disbelief. And what about when she slapped me first? Is she going to apologize to me for that? He tried to justify her behavior by saying that his sister had been a little drunk and that seeing me spill red wine on her had made her aggressive. He argued that anyone in his sister's position would have reacted the same way and that I simply should have stayed quiet and accepted her reaction. At that point, I had to stop for a moment. I didn't know whether I felt more hurt or angry over how little he seemed to understand what I had gone through. Then I told him that although I regretted slapping his sister because I don't like violence, I didn't regret defending myself. I wished he had supported me in front of his family, but he didn't. So I was forced to defend myself. Maybe if he had done what he should have done, things never would have gone that far. But his repeated failure to defend me and his willingness to let his sister treat me like garbage made me realize something very important. I couldn't stay with someone who didn't respect me. Then I listed every time he and his family had mistreated me over the years and explained how each one had made me feel. I told him that if he, as my husband, wasn't even brave enough to stand up to his spoiled sister, then I didn't see any point in continuing our relationship. Ryan argued that he loved his family and didn't like confronting them, especially his precious sister. He pointed out that I was his wife, so he felt I should understand why keeping the peace was important to him. I told him that being his wife didn't mean I was obligated to tolerate disrespect or mistreatment. Every time he remained silent, I felt like he was choosing his family over me, and I was tired of coming second in my own marriage. As if that wasn't enough, Ryan also informed me that his mother had basically uninvited me from every future family gathering at her house because she didn't want me around them anymore. When I looked shocked, Ryan argued that this was actually fine because I didn't like his family anyway. He told me that from now on, during Christmas or New Year's, I was free to spend time with my own family, just as I had always wanted, while he would spend those holidays with his. I laughed in disbelief at how selfish he sounded, the nerve he had to ignore my feelings and try to manipulate me yet again. At that moment, I told him that I had been thinking about a decision for several days, but after talking to him, everything had become completely clear. I wanted a divorce. I was done with this marriage. Ryan's face immediately fell, and he looked like he couldn't believe what I had just said. He argued that I wasn't thinking clearly and was only speaking out of anger. Then he said, Okay, there's no need to talk about divorce. If you don't want to apologize to my sister, I'll talk to her and convince her to let it go this time since you're so determined about this. But next time, don't ever slap my sister again. I told him, I don't care about any of that anymore, Ryan. It's over. My lawyer will contact you soon. Now you're free to spend the rest of your life taking care of your mother and sister, just like you've always wanted. Ryan tried to argue some more, but I simply stood up and left him there. I couldn't stay in a relationship where I wasn't valued, where my feelings didn't matter, and where his family always came before our marriage. Since then, Ryan has been sending me voice messages begging me not to go through with the divorce. He keeps telling me that I'm destroying our marriage and that he wants to spend the rest of his life with me. I've muted his messages for now, and I'll continue ignoring him. Update 3. My mother-in-law has been messaging me constantly since I met with my husband a few days ago and asked for a divorce. She claims that I have no right to simply leave her son. According to her, I'm making him suffer unnecessarily just out of spite. She strongly believes that I should fix everything by moving back in with my husband, even if I'm unhappy in the marriage, and apologizing to my sister-in-law immediately. So today I sent her this message. Margaret, I've already met with a lawyer, so this divorce is happening whether you like it or not. Just a warning, I'm more than capable of exposing you and your spoiled daughter on social media now that I no longer care about your family. You and your daughter have done nothing but harass me throughout this marriage, and I have screenshots to prove it. So don't test me. Your son is going to end up alone now because of you. I hope the next time he brings a woman home, you think twice before treating her like garbage. Since I sent that message, my mother-in-law has read it but hasn't had the courage to respond. I suppose she finally realized that I'm serious. As for my sister-in-law, she is blocked, so she can't even contact me. Update 4. The divorce was finalized a couple of months ago, and now that I'm officially away from that family of lunatics, I can tell you more about them. To begin with, I have to say that my former brother-in-law actually helped me deal with my former sister-in-law. When he learned about everything that happened, he told her that he wouldn't give her money to sue me, and that she couldn't use any of his lawyers because they were busy with more serious matters. He also told her that she should apologize to me, although that is something she still hasn't done. However, he did apologize on behalf of his wife by sending me a Christmas basket filled with different products and a handwritten card explaining all of this. The last I heard, they are now living separately because my former sister-in-law has continued behaving this way. According to his card, this behavior, at least the violent part, started appearing more recently because she wanted to become a mother but hadn't been able to get pregnant. They had been trying for a year and were preparing to try other methods, but she was extremely frustrated about it. Sometime after the party I told you about, she also slapped an employee at a spa and had apparently been behaving this way for a while. Because of that, her husband moved into an apartment they own in the city while she remained in the house. I heard this last part from my ex-husband during one of our divorce hearings. He was trying to get me to feel some sympathy for his sister, as though the fact that she was suffering somehow justified the way she behaved. But she was already unpleasant before that, and plenty of people go through problems without treating the rest of humanity badly. So no, I don't feel any sympathy for her. The divorce is finished, and I no longer have to worry about them, their toxic family dynamic, or their empty excuses for everything they've done.